I Want to Jump Like Dee Dee, with me, Giles Sibbald, is the music podcast that does music a bit differently. I'm talking to some incredible musicians, DJs and producers about how they use an experimental mindset to fuel their own creativity, pursue new challenges, overcome fears, bounce back from mistakes. In this whole thinking I've had about the importance of our mindset being, kind of super important to how we handle life, what the future might hold for us. I shouldn't overlook the importance that we place on maintaining and regenerating our friendships and relationships. For me personally, how I've dealt with them is sort of linked into events that go back to my 20s and before then to my childhood. I'm also interested in how friendships evolve over our life these days. Do they come and go? Is it as commonplace to maintain lifelong friendships as much these days? And in fact, how we ourselves evolve and stay friends with ourselves. Okay, yeah, I'm a bit of a nerd and I've got weird interests, but there you go. Anyway, my guest today has created the most beautiful album called Left Hand, which is their third solo album, actually. And alongside the sort of exquisite songwriting and arrangements, the notable themes running through it are, you got it, friendships, relationships, both in terms of themes and some of the awesome collaborators on the record, and with more than a sprinkling of sort of self-evolution and acceptance. And the record will be released on the 25th of August, which, as long as my podcast editing skills remain as resolutely average as they have been since day one, that's going to be the same day as this episode is released. So hold your breath. I'm feeling confident. So Becca Mancari, welcome and thanks so much for coming on and being part of this mindset journey.
Thank you. I love the entrance. That's so beautiful. I'm also a nerd for this kind of thing, so I'm happy to be here.
It's really amazing, and I guess I've always sort of had an interest in it, but it started to really sort of take off, thinking about the future, maybe about 2023, so probably about 2016, so sort of seven years ago, and started thinking about, okay, our lives are sort of the way that we live our lives has changed so much. I'm like sort of 55, and I've sort of straddled these different, I think, sort of different ways of living. Going back to my parents, it was very sort of linear, how they live their lives, and so it got me thinking, how do we adapt? How
Yeah,
adaptable are we? It's all those sort of things. So yeah, that's where it all sort of started.
cool.
So,
I think that sounds like something that I felt like in this record in particular, because I produced it myself, I was able to bring in collaborators that were friends, and like
mm,
something that I feel like is important to me is connection through our art forms, but mostly the connection between friends first. Like there's never been like,
mm,
oh, you do music, so that's the interesting part about you. It's actually kind
yeah.
of the least interesting part about them. Um, so that's kind of like a fun way to like stay connected in a different way.
Can I tell you? So we're actually recording this a couple of days before the release, 2 or 3 days before the release.
Mhm.
Can I tell you my favorite track on it?
Oh, please.
It's Mexican Queen.
Cool. Deep
It,
cut.
it's just awesome. It's just such a great song. It's just
Thank
beautiful.
you.
Really, really great.
Thank you so much. That song has been with me probably the longest of all the songs
Oh,
that are on
really?
the record. Yes. And it's had an evolution throughout time, in ways that were really particular and beautiful. I had a band with Brittany Howard, who's on this record as well.
Mm,
We had a band called Bermuda Triangle, and that song started in that band where I started writing it. And
mm,
Brittany was like, "Ah," she's like, "This is nice. Like, come on, Beck, you got to finish this one." And I just couldn't. I don't think I was able to told in this moment. I think that's because it's a
mm,
love song and I don't really write
mm,
a lot of love songs. And
mm.
it's in particular to my long-term partner,
Yeah.
who actually just became an American citizen this year,
Oh, amazing.
which has been a really long journey. Like she's
Oh
from
gosh.
Mexico, and it's
Yeah.
been really like a really huge part of our relationship and journey to get
Yeah.
there. It was a lot of, if you don't know about immigration in America, it's very difficult. So,
I can only, I
um,
mean, yeah, I mean, I don't know it, but I can only imagine how bureaucratic, difficult,
oh,
and kind of stressful,
so stressful.
on so many
So,
levels.
so that song is like
Mhm.
a very victorious feeling to me.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so
I
I love
bet.
that you love it. You are sentimental. That's a nice one. That's great.
I mean, so, yeah. So how are you feeling now? Sort of. So we're, but I mean, you may get asked this, other times. But how are you feeling? A couple of days before the release, do you get nervous, happy,
Yeah.
just a bunch of emotions?
I started like the weekend feeling really good, feeling really peaceful, doing my inner work. And then Monday, all out the window. I felt so much anxiety. I had like a stomach like cramp. Like I was just like couldn't breathe. Like I was really experiencing like a lot of anxiety. And I think now today I'm like settling into saying again, like, you
Yeah,
know, all you can do is try to show up every single day and embrace
yeah.
what's happening around you. And like right now, I actually have been practicing these songs for the last month, almost every day with my band, because whenever we, you know, start a live show with new songs that we've never played together and
Mm,
we've never realized them live, that's such a journey and it's so hard and so fun. And I
mm,
think my motto has just been like, you just don't know what's going to happen next, whether good or bad. So
mm,
in the moment, like experience all the feelings that are happening. And like
mm.
right now, I feel grateful for the chance to still be here, to be honest. I don't
That
know if I
that
always thought I would be.
yeah. I mean, that sort of feeling of living in the moment.
Yeah.
Is that something that you've had to work on? Because I have as well.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I mean, I didn't I hadn't been to therapy until 2020, late 2020,
Mm,
ever,
mm,
and I had released 2 records before
yeah,
the last one being the greatest part, and that, like, just I think was the gateway into realizing how angry and hurt I had been,
yeah,
for most of my life, and, coming out as queer and gay in my world at the time that I did was just totally radical and unacceptable and
yeah,
totally isolating for years. I'd been
mm,
on my own, truly on my own, other than friends for many, many, many years.
mm,
Um, and so I think when the pandemic hit, I finally stopped for the first time, like many of us did.
yeah,
And I really had to reckon with like all of the things that I'd been disassociating from through, for me it was like using drinking as a tool
mm,
to like um numb myself, like as a coping
yeah,
mechanism rather, instead of like
yeah,
a nice glass of wine.
yeah,
And so when I really realized like how my life was disintegrating around me, um, it was almost like you either do that or you lose everything.
mm,
And that's how this record started, to be honest.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I was at the ledge.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess this is traced back to childhood, because one of the things, obviously,
Yeah.
from a kind of mindset point of view, that I feel is important, and what is, when I've sort of traced think about how I am now, and kind of what my individual journey has been. There are still some, and I had a relatively comfortable upbringing.
Mhm.
If I'm being very honest, and but there are things it's relative. There are things that happen that stay with you. You know, big, little, whatever, and some,
Yeah.
and it's weird. Something about friendships that happened with my dad, sort of back in, when I was kind of 8 years old, where
Mm.
he didn't believe me over somebody else, and that has stayed with me
Wow. Isn't that interesting?
for
Yeah.
this length of time. And I've thought about, when we talk about friendships and relationships, about how that that's the main thing that sticks in my mind about,
Mhm.
how I deal with friendships. That
Wow.
element of sort of trust. There's somebody that my dad didn't believe me, didn't have that sort of trust in me. So now, and also what I've done. Sorry to labour it, but
Yeah.
it's it's this thing where when you create something and it's sort of yours and you're kind of proud of it, and then you ask somebody else what they think about it.
The first the first problem, right?
Yeah,
What do you think
exactly.
about this?
Oh, they don't like it, or somebody doesn't believe what you said, or ask for
Mm,
some sort of form of validation over just taking your word for it. I have to check myself not to react badly,
mhm.
in those sort of situations.
Yeah, I mean, that is such interesting. I really want to go back to the thing that you said about something that could affect you at 8 years old. I think for me as an artist,
Mm,
I do write about the queer experience. That's my experience. So I write about that element and
yeah,
what that entails, which is a lot of beauty and pain. But I think what is so universal though is we all experience things that really mark us, right?
yeah,
They kind of imprint on us. And then we start to, if we're not careful, let it be part of our personality or let it be
mm,
part of our destiny to be I don't feel like people trust me.
yeah,
And this to me, thinking about this record, it's a conversation with myself saying
with yourself.
wake up. You're
Mm,
you're missing out on life around you. And I think for people that I know, I see that in other people. Now that I see it in myself, I start to see it in others.
yeah,
And I think this it's an invitation for everyone who listens to love themselves and to sit with themselves with whatever that means. Cause it could be we're not perfect people. That's one thing I
mm,
know about myself as I get older. I'm gonna fail you. I'm not gonna be the perfect person in your life, but I am going to be honest. I'm going to try to be honest.
mm. What in this record I mentioned in the intro about self acceptance.
Mhm.
Has that been quite a large part of this record, and also what you've been going through personally.
100%. I
Mm,
just wrote a press release for the record to come out, and I was very honest about that. And it was really scary because I was it's such a fine line being a musician and then being a person.
mm,
I have chosen a path where I've used my given name also. It's something that I tell younger artists. I'm like, it's a choice. Maybe use a moniker, maybe be Pony Princess, I don't know, whatever. Just kind of separate yourself from it. But
mm,
using my name, Becca Mancari, looking at it I have three other siblings with that last name. I have a whole
mm,
group of people with history and life and memories attached to a certain kind of thing. And
mm,
so I think for me, finding my own path and leaving, to be fair to myself, the way I grew up, people don't get out always. They stay. They don't leave those communities because they're so isolated. And when they leave, they're you know, basically shunned. I left a community where being gay was you're going to hell. You're not going to be accepted anymore. You can't be around your younger siblings.
mm,
That's heavy stuff, and
yeah,
so of course when you're young, to accept yourself when you've been told, because I was told language in the religious community I grew up in was literally, you cannot trust yourself. That
mm,
was what I was taught as a kid. It was a total divorce from self, which was the self will guide you towards the wrong path. Jesus or Christianity will guide you towards the right path. And if you stick on that path, then you're safe.
mm,
So if you spend your whole life living in that kind of training of thought, undoing that is a lifetime of work. And I
mm,
think that's what
yeah,
I did when I started therapy in 2020. And then it kind of allowed me to write these songs that are extremely personal in ways. I'm talking about
yeah,
stuff that if you really listen, you're like, what? Are you
Yeah.
talking about, like, you're not almost there anymore? Like, you almost drove off the road that night? Like, what am I saying? Like, I'm saying
Mm,
what it is to be, like, alive still and, like, make the choice to stay. And, like, what a beautiful choice. Like,
mm,
what a gift. Like, that's, like,
yeah.
to me, like, that's why this record isn't a dark, sad record. It's, like, the most beautiful thing you could, like, experience, which is life.
Yeah. Yeah. There's quite a lot to sort of
Yeah, a
unpack
little
there.
impact,
As well,
yeah.
I mean, did the oh gosh. Do you know this is the first time that I've been properly stumped. It's no, it's really sort of it's really really interesting.
Mm,
Thinking about how you got to the point of, okay, something has to sort of change. Going
yeah,
from, as you said, unraveling that lifetime
yeah.
of um I'm not going to call it indoctrination, but
You can call
a
it.
way of being
Yeah.
that's sort of instilled in you, and to then divorce yourself from that must be I mean, incredibly difficult.
It is, but it's incredibly interesting to watch. I watch people around me who also have experienced similar upbringings, different religions, different backgrounds, like,
Yeah.
I think we can all experience life and say, like, I have to make a choice of if I'm going to accept my and love myself in this one life,
Mm,
or I'm going to just almost, like, close my eyes, just be in the trance of life, which is just, like,
mm,
accept that, like, this is as far as I can get, this is, like, as deep as I can go.
yeah.
Which I get that, I do understand there is a time to be like, "I'm just gonna watch, you know, a TV show. I'm gonna watch Love Island and just, like, totally get myself blasted on
Yeah.
nonsense." And
Yeah.
then there's a time, I think, to be like, look outside, like, I have this beautiful window I'm looking out right now, and I just think I'm so, like, for so long, I couldn't see what was around me, truly.
Mm, mm.
I just spent, like, I worked so hard. I mean, when I tell you when I tell you I came here with nothing and no one to Nashville, I
Into
just got
Nashville.
in my car one day. This was 10 years ago. I got in my car. I'd never visited. I'd never been to the city. I just said, "I'm gonna go and learn how to be a songwriter." Like, go to
Yeah.
one of the hardest places to, like, break into the songwriting
Mm,
craft. And I think because of that, I just spent years just, like, hustling, working, growing, partying, like, getting to know people, like, but
yeah.
I didn't get to know myself truly yet
Yeah.
because I was just surviving, and I don't blame myself. I think this is what I'm trying to say, it's like, everybody's timing is perfect. Like, my
Mm,
timing was perfect. Like, I am so proud of the person that made the last 2 records. I'm so proud of the person that, like, hustled so hard and, like, stayed up all night and, like, hung out with people, like, that's all part of it, you know?
mm, mm,
Like, the song "Over and Over" is about when I first moved to Nashville, and, like, I was still in the closet when I first moved to Nashville. I went back into the closet for, like, 2 years, 2,
mm,
maybe 3 years, actually, because when I came out, it was so hard, and I was so alone that
mm.
it was really hard for me to leave, and that happens to a lot of queer people,
Yeah.
and so when I moved here, I was finally, like, allowed I allowed myself to say, I know that there's no going back from this, like, this is who I am, come what may, like, I'm gonna keep going down this path.
Mm,
But yeah, it takes sometimes people 10 years to really say, like, "What happened? Like, how did we get here, and how am I still thinking about those moments of being a child and saying, like, I know love will be taken from me if I am who I am," and then experiencing that.
yeah. Do you think that Nashville, the place, as a sort of physical environment, helped you in, either sort of shaping who, your identity, your true identity?
I think that Nashville is one of those places where you find, because it's small, big,
Yeah,
it's a small, big town. You find your real community because there's not so many of us actually here that are like on the same mindset. We're
yeah,
actually not like such a liberal city, to be honest. Like,
mm,
the people think, oh, you're a blue dot, but politics are so steeped in like Republican, like
yeah,
you couldn't even imagine how bad it is here, to be honest.
mm,
But because of that, it's something I've always recognized in my life. When I go into environments like that, you real sees real and real finds real. And so I found like Brittany Howard, who is a queer person of color from the South, like
yeah, yeah,
who really says like, Beck, like we are who we are. And of course people aren't gonna necessarily accept us right away. So we have to accept ourselves first. Like we both know that. Like we both know we don't walk a path where we're like easily palatable for everyone, like
yeah, yeah,
I could have like chosen to wear like a dress and like, grow my hair out long and like pretend like I wasn't gay even. Like, when I first
yeah,
moved to Nashville, being gay and being a musician did not equal being successful.
yeah,
It actually equaled in the worst possible scenario, which was like, oh, we don't know what to do with you. Or like, well, we
yeah,
like your music, but how do we market you?
mhm,
So it definitely did call me to, like, if I would have lived in New York or LA as like starting music, I would have been accepted for who I was, probably. Not always. I mean, I'm a
yeah,
woman, non-binary person, so that's always going to be
yeah,
a battle. But yeah, I think the environment, to answer your question, deeply impacted my ability to say, I'm here, this is who I am, and I'm not going to back down. And
yeah.
that has been like a journey, and the right one for me.
And then there's always that, like you say, with people like Brittany, and it's sort of finding your people,
Yeah,
finding your people who have that sort of positivity and that mindset that matches the ones that can really improve your life rather than
yeah.
drain it. And that again takes time, doesn't it, to really do that. It's a process sometimes of, you meet up with somebody, then it becomes apparent that maybe they're not the right sort of fit for a sort of long-term friendship or whatever. And
Yeah.
it's a thing that sort of takes time, and it can be a struggle and
Mhm.
debilitating, I guess.
Yeah, it can be a struggle. I mean, for me though, it's like such a gift again to find those people. I think like,
Yeah.
you know, that's been my gift here, and that's why it kind of has kept me here, honestly, because it's definitely not the politics or it's not a very pretty city. I don't know if you've ever been to Nashville, but
I've never been, no.
you're not missing too much. It's okay. The people are great. The people are great.
So with things, as a sort of child with sort of kind of things that were sort of born naturally, sort of born with kind of like sort of curiosity and things like I guess playfulness, as well, which playfulness often kind of gets drummed out of us.
Mhm.
I mean, were those things that were with you, or have you found that you've had to sort of refine them as you've got older?
I think that I've had to allow myself the time to play again. Like that's what's
Mm,
so cool about this record. I'm sitting in this room that I wrote the record in, and
yeah,
I spent all of 2022 in this room and the first half of it. And my friends even were like, "Where did you like Becca? Come out and play!" And I was like, "I can't. I'm playing in here.
I'm
This is
playing
my
something
space."
else. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm playing something else. And it was pretty amazing because I did a lot. It was the first time that I allowed myself to write and record at the same time. And
mm,
like I hadn't had that capacity, or I didn't feel like I was gonna do that, and I wasn't planning on producing this record. And so I ended up doing everything in GarageBand, which is the only thing I knew at the time how to use.
yeah,
And you know what's great about that, going back to your very long ago pick of your favorite song, Mexican Queen,
Yeah.
a lot of those sounds are from GarageBand.
Oh wow.
They are, and we reamp them to give them a different kind of feel in the studio. But that was kind of the running joke on the record or in the studio sessions when I brought in some friends players. They're like, "What's that sound? Like that's so sick!" Like, and I was like, "GarageBand." They're like, "GarageBand." They're like, "Am I going to download GarageBand again? Like, what is happening?"
We have all these amazing tools around us, and it's on Garage.
When I think of
Brilliant.
it's funny we were talking about play. That was like for me because there were so many limitations in GarageBand.
Mm,
You really have to be creative, and you really have to be like, I think like, if I could pat myself on the back, have some taste, like to say like,
yeah,
oh, this sounds
yeah,
really good. Like this is what I have to work with, and I think because of that, you play with unexpected things because you're kind of trying to find something cool
mm,
in something
yeah,
that feels kind of uncool.
yeah,
And I love that. I mean, some of my favorite musicians are like Mac DeMarco, like Beach House, like all those sounds are from like shitty little like Yamahas and like
yeah.
not very cool, like cool gear. But it's the person that makes the gear cool, you
Yeah,
know.
totally. Yeah, it's interesting that, isn't it? You know, that it's there's a kind of sort of DIY ethic that sort of
Deeply.
underpins that and which I think as well helps with making music
Yeah.
that people can relate to.
Hmm.
Where you think, okay, do you know what? That's a little trick on GarageBand. Oh, maybe I could do that. It's kind of like inspiring, isn't it, for
Yeah.
for the people that are sort of listening to it.
Yeah. I love that. I think that's what I've always, or at least from this record, have felt like in my heart is what something I want to create someday is a space for people like me who
Yeah,
kind of didn't actually think that they could go
yeah,
into a studio and or even the bedroom and say like this sounds great.
yeah, yeah.
Like this is like, and I think a lot of like the younger generation does do that and understands that. Like,
Mm,
and it's pretty amazing, honestly, what a time. But I do want to, I think my goal or dream would be like to help equip people with language. So, especially women who go into the studio and feel truly trapped
mm,
and truly like disregarded simply because they don't have the language, not because they don't have the talent, not because they don't know what they want. They just maybe don't know how to say what they want yet. And
mm,
language is so important and also so limiting at the same time.
yeah.
So, anyway.
I remember I not so long ago I did an interview with Aja Monet,
Mm.
who is just is a poet and has just brought out their first album, um,
Oh, cool.
and it's really incredible. But one of her um, kind of themes or ideas is about providing the language for the unlanguageable.
Mm.
The idea is that yeah,
Cool.
and
Cool.
it's really yeah,
That's
it's
amazing.
really sort of powerful. Thinking about that as you said, people who don't have the tools to be able to have that self expression.
Yeah.
I think what you're suggesting, your if you want to call it legacy, to being able to do that, I think is just so important.
As somebody,
Yeah,
yeah.
go on. No, go on.
Well, as somebody that has really struggled, like again with self acceptance, with like believing in myself, and then realizing like this was like a chance for me to take a huge risk. I mean, like doing this
Mm,
record. I mean, I brought in now to be fair, my dearest friend Juan Solorzano, who's played on everything I've ever put out. He's an
yeah.
amazing guitar player in Nashville, co-produced this record, and it's just the best. We're the best counterparts. Like he brings out
Mm,
the best in me. I think I bring out the best in him. And and yet still like I think if I could open that door for somebody else, like he opened it for me. Like, we all have people that open doors for us. Like,
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
beauty of life. That's the beauty of community. That's the beauty of living. It's like, what can I do to truly change somebody's life? Is
Yeah.
to enable them, like, is to give them the strength to say, okay, here's the tools. What you do with them is like gonna be like up to you, but
Yeah.
to not gatekeep. I mean, like that's just like that's something that's so
Yeah.
big in our community. I know all the entertainment world in general. Like, I'm
Mm.
sure in what you do, there's gatekeepers. Like,
Yeah,
so like,
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, and so like allowing that to be part of your, you know, what is remembered about you. What a
I've
what
sort
a
of
beautiful thing.
I think, when you mentioned about, kind of door openers and, that those sort of ideas and what people do for each other. I've been having, maybe going off on a tangent, but it is, I think it is interesting. So it's about, the world has just sort of become so capitalist, in like ultra sort of capitalist, and people can't afford stuff, whereas
Mhm,
it is kind of relevant to the sort of the mindset thing, but it's people might not have money, but they have inherent skills and things that they're strong at. That might be, it might be writing poetry, it might be
mhm,
drawing, it might be this, that, the other. And if we could get more people sharing skills,
mhm,
as a sort of community, where if you could imagine, I sometimes imagine, like just to make it a bit easier on my mind, a group of, kind of five people sort of coexisting, almost like this sort
mhm,
of idea of a commune almost.
mhm,
And being able to sort of share where money doesn't enter into it, because it's about
mhm,
sort of sharing sort of different skills. It's like, okay, can you help me with this, or can you help me with that? And that happens. It's almost like there's a sort of social contract that
mhm.
becomes stronger than anything.
Yeah, I mean, what a world that would be. I mean, I I will say this, when we talk about for me saying why I still live in Nashville, there is like a community that does kind of come around each other and say like,
Mm,
I can teach you this, or I can like, bring this into the equation. And that's happened a lot in my life. And like, what a gift.
mm,
Like, and that's why like I want to do that for somebody else. Like I've had some younger artists like recently reach out to me and be like, "Hey, like will you like produce a track for me? I like
yeah.
love your music." And that's something that I really want to do for them. And like at this point like without charge, because I know that this people have done that for me, like
Mm,
um and that is like huge. Like it's huge like to like have that. I
mm,
I remember having that. Like, there's something that to say about um it's not just about like what you can give me. Like it really is about like bettering the world and leaving it a better place. And I think
mm,
as we see like the environment around us, like that's something also that I like talked about on this record. Like the last song on Left Hand is called To Love the Earth. And to
yeah.
me, that's like a song about how I was taught that again, you're gonna leave, the earth is gonna burn up someday, and it doesn't really matter
Mm,
because we're going to a better place.
yeah.
And someday and everybody else should go to that better place with us. And so, not taking into the equation like that this earth is like it basically was just like it was always gonna die. Like so it doesn't really matter. And
Yeah.
I think for me, like realizing like what a harmful, like what a sad like way to like look at this beautiful world around
This beautiful
us.
planet. Yeah.
Yeah, and so like of course like the one thing I can do is like try to leave something behind for people to pick up and carry and keep making it better. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I really want to do that. That's what I'm trying to do.
How are you feeling since you sort of quit drinking? And the reason I ask is because I quit about 4 years ago.
Okay, so this is something I feel like bad about in the press release. I feel like there was a misunderstanding of I'm not sober, but
Mm,
I did stop drinking for a really long time.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Right.
So how did I feel from that? I feel like I have a lot of respect for the sober community, and
Mm.
I feel like it's something that I realized that, and I don't have language for this, so I want to be careful because I didn't go to AA. I've not been,
Yeah.
but I have a lot of friends that are like a lot of. It's
Yeah.
interesting. There's like a huge group of us that are like sober curious, and then a huge group of us that are sober, and then like people that still really, really drink. That's like
Yeah. Yeah.
another part of my world. Um,
Yeah.
but for me to spend a lot of time not was really revealing of like where I was at with it. And
Mm.
maybe I will someday not drink at all. Um, I don't drink a lot anymore. Like that's just something I'm not interested in.
Yeah.
I don't like it as a tool to numb yourself out.
Yeah.
And I also was, for me, I was not diagnosed as, I didn't see, this is where I want to be careful because I don't know the language about this, but
Yeah.
I don't think I'm an alcoholic, but I don't know the language around that, to
Yeah.
be fair.
Yeah.
And maybe you could speak to me on that more, but that's
Mm.
something that just in general, I just want to be really respectful of because I do have friends that are like not able to drink at all. And
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and that's something that's really important. And
Understood.
like, even in my touring world now, this is like something that's really changed. And thank God, like one of my players is sober and has been since 2020. And
Mm.
it like was life changing. When I tell you like that person's not this, like they are like totally a different person.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um and we like now I don't allow like alcohol in the green room. Like I'm just like, we're a sober green room. Like, you can drink
Yeah.
outside, like you can like, get your own drinks or, I'll get you like drink tabs or whatever, but like not with my friend. Like,
Yeah.
we don't want like I just want it's just a different vibe. Like it's just like it's just a different thing. I don't know. I just enjoy touring so much more now. Like,
Yeah.
I used to be like,
I know.
woo, like, but now I'm just like, man, I'm like, I don't know. I can like drive home. I can not leave things. I
Yeah.
used to leave so much shit at like the green room or like in as well. So
I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, I used to, but like my thing for, when I used to go to gigs, and
yeah,
I don't go to as many as I used to pre-COVID. I don't know. I'm not in the country as much, but I do still do go to a few. But I quit December 2019, so just before
oh
COVID,
wow.
and thank God I did.
I was gonna say good for you.
Yes, yeah, it was good. It was good timing. I'm not sure
Yeah,
there was any logic in it at the time, but I did. Maybe again it was this sort of serendipity or something
yeah,
like that. But uh, going back into sort of going to gigs meant I had to kind of reassess how I approach them, what I got out of
yeah,
them.
yeah,
Whereas I would used to I'd start thinking about going to a gig, kind of quite early on. About think about going up about 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock, something like that.
yeah,
And it it becomes unsustainable. You just can't
yeah.
can't do it. And but I remember that the first ones that I went to after I quit, it was a very weird sort of experience. Like,
It is.
okay, what do I do? What do I do now?
It is a weird experience. I mean, I similarly did that too, and I feel like now though I can't imagine. Like I can't imagine, especially like playing the show, my own show.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
can't imagine. Can't imagine. Even because I'm like leveled up so hard with these songs and I'm playing like so many harder parts on guitar
yeah,
that I just can't even imagine having a substance in me other than a ton of water. Like, I really can't. Like, I'm just like, no. And I also think it's interesting, like, the mind is so deceptive and like I remember thinking when I was like drinking, because I would get like a buzz on before. I would get like I've been drunk before playing shows.
yeah, 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 yeah,
And I remember being like, I sounded incredible. And then I'd listen to videos and I was just like, oh.
Oh, fuck.
I was like, oh my God, you're delusional, bro. So yeah, that's what a huge shit. What a thank God. And you know it's crazy. It's like, um, I really feel like I don't know how you feel about this, but like I feel like I've never felt or looked better. Like I feel like my fans are
Mm,
like they'd come up to me at shows and said, I almost didn't recognize you. Like, you're like a
mm,
different person. Like,
mm.
you know, I've always loved your music. I really like appreciate you as an artist, but like, what happened to you? And I was just like, I just took care of myself, bro.
Yeah, you just take I'm just taking care. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no, exactly. I the other thing that sort of came with that quitting for me,
Mm.
and I don't know how you feel about this whole kind of idea through your life, but I trusted my instinct more, my kind of gut
Mm.
instinct, because I always had a bit of sort of tension because my nature has been sometimes to analyze things,
Yeah.
probably overanalyze. But then there's an instinct part of me that's telling me to go a certain way, but my analytical part sometimes not. I mean, what's your sort of relationship been with instinct, or kind of like how you come to decisions and things like that?
I love that question. It's something that I definitely would say it's I used to always like to pride myself, oh, I have such a good gut. And I do
Mm,
have, like, a sixth sense about things, like, I have, like,
mm,
I'm like, "This is what's happening." Or I'll know something about somebody, it's kinda weird, but, I think now more and more I have to say, "Well, this is what I really feel." When you start to ask yourself, and this is something I'm
mm,
still working on, it's like, "What do you feel, Becca? Like, what do you really feel in
yeah,
the moment?" Like and this, like, practice mindfulness, right? It's, like,
yeah,
something that my therapist and I work through together, and
mm,
she's always like, you know, can you spend time in the day with that feeling and allow it to be there and then allow it to pass? And
yeah.
then I think because I don't know if you're into astrology at all, but I'm a,
No.
okay, amazing. I am low key, and one of the things is I have a lot of Aries in me, and there's like a lot of reaction. Like I have to really work on like not reacting right away because that's a
Mm,
really big thing for me. My gut will say react, like, you know,
mhm,
text them, like, be mad, like, I have to really spend what I've learned in trusting my gut is to wait.
yeah,
Sometimes my first
interesting.
instinct isn't the right one,
Yeah,
but sometimes my first feeling isn't the right feeling. And if I just spent like 1 hour with that
yeah,
thought, I probably would come with a better maybe it would stay the same, but it would be definitely not said in like such um an intense way. And that's just something I struggle with.
that's interesting because I mean I'm Aries.
Look at
I was
you.
so my birthday is 5th of April, so I'm at the
Yes, you are.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
And, yeah, there's definitely what you said, there's definitely something of that in me, and I've tried I'm really into this idea of, emotional intelligence,
Yeah.
sort of being kind of like a basically like a kinda superpower,
Mm.
and sort of within that, I guess what we're talking about is that self-regulation,
Yeah.
knowing when to not dive in.
Yeah, it's a big one, and I think knowing when, um having some, like, agency over yourself too, and, like, saying, like I like to link it back to, like, my writing even, you know, there's a reactionary part of me, and there's a
Mm,
song called "I Needed You" on the record that I wrote, and at the time when I first wrote it, it was very much, like, pointed towards a person,
mm,
and that was the only perspective that I was allowing it to have.
yeah,
And then I realized, like, well, there's always 2 sides to a story,
yeah.
and that person had a side to their way that
Yes.
they reacted to me,
Yeah.
and so allowing that to then be both-sided, I went in and rewrote how the perspective was. was really amazing. And that's like mindfulness practice, because that wasn't something
Yeah.
that I knew before. I would have just said, well, this is just how you made me feel.
Yeah, it's a really interesting perspective
Mhm.
trying to to do that, to look at a particular situation from the other person's perspective, because
Yeah.
and it's hard, even harder these days when kind of feel that the on the one hand, you've got a world that is much more sort of nuanced in lots of ways, and complex
Mhm.
than it has been, but things just get kind of condensed into a, well, it's either this or this,
Yeah.
in kind of people's
Yeah.
reactions to things. And I find that really difficult. So it makes it harder, I think, generally for people to sort of take a pause, say, well, what's the other what might the other person's experiences have been that are causing this sort of reaction? It's incredibly hard.
100%. 100%. And I feel like that's something that is very deeply part of like the culture, Western culture, especially American, like the United States right now. It's like
Certainly,
there's just
yeah,
like, yeah, like I would
mm,
think similar, yeah, with where you
yeah,
are.
very,
Um, and so yeah, it's like to me, to be a nuanced writer, I can't imagine just being like, you're wrong, I'm right. I don't
yeah,
trust people that say that. I
no,
don't trust them. I'm wise to that now. I'm like, nah,
absolutely right,
yeah, you got
absolutely
all the
right.
answers, then we're see you later.
I mean, talking about that on a sort of related note, in terms of sort of, well, we talk about musical collaborations, but
Yeah.
any kind of form of collaborations where there's a interpersonal relationships, where and how to get the best out of those, with your collaborations. I mean, how I mean, I guess, what do you get out of collaborations yourself, and how do you find that you have to um what's the word? How do you approach them?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I like to approach collaboration like you have something like I think it's like I usually try to bring in people who I feel one like connected to if I can
Mm,
at this point in my life. I'm not trying to work with people that aren't kind.
yeah,
That's just
yeah,
like a base level.
yeah,
I
yeah.
think if you're in your ego totally, then I mean, I want you to be confident. Confidence great.
Mm,
Ego,
not
I'm
so
not
much.
interested in. No.
Yeah, yeah,
I've seen that. I mean, the music industry, like people are always parading around, like, and they're probably the most insecure. Like
yes, yeah,
you're so in your ego that I don't trust you at all. Like you actually probably aren't that confident about what you're doing. But I think for me, it's like I just want to see the person like shine. Like I want to see them like come out of their like come from their like soul. I don't know, like from their like spirit. Like and then
yeah.
that impacts the music so tremendously. And I think, you know, again, like it goes back to what I said about like my friends, like the connection there is deeper than just like a commercial capitalistic, oh, you make music, you're in the industry, like you have a big name. Like I work with people also who are not big names, like
Mm, mm,
the choice to work with one, I mean, I don't like the saying actually he should be. He is an extremely gifted person. Like, that's only a
yeah,
matter of time. Will people catch up on that? I hope so.
yeah,
But what I know is the choice to work with him was not like the easiest choice at first for everyone that I worked with, like in the business. They're like, we don't know anything that he's done before. Like, are you sure? Like, are you sure? And I'm like, yes, I
mm,
am sure because I know that this connection, this collaboration, when you do it, it's the energy. It's like you gotta trust the
yeah,
energy too. Like, and sometimes the energy is there,
yeah,
sometimes it's not.
mm,
When I made the greatest part with Zach Farrell, he had never produced a record before other than his own. He'd never done something like that with me.
yeah,
And it was a huge risk then too. And some people said to me, I don't know, like maybe you shouldn't. And I just said, no, the energy is with him, and the energy was. And like to me, it's like collaboration is just knowing yourself enough and knowing how to like sense when there is a kinetic energy happening, and like
Yeah.
you really can like I can trust that. I felt that many times in my life, and it's always been really spot on, except for
I
once.
except for what?
Except for once, and that was really bad. So
It would it would have been it
we
would have
all
been
make mistakes.
it would have been exceptional if you were 100% flawless in that. That would have been exceptional, you know. But
I would
anyways.
I would I would I would want you to not trust me. You'd be like, see ya.
I mean, with that trust, you know that you have that you like understanding that energy. I mean, is that you mentioned mindfulness, a couple of minutes ago. I mean, does spirituality sort of play a part in your life now in a positive spiritual? I shouldn't say positive, but spirituality. Does spirituality does it play a role in your life? Let's leave it at that.
It does. I mean,
Mm.
it's a complicated thing for me still. It's
Sure.
something that I think will be like maybe always part of my like uh ethos. I will always be part of my like I will never not feel like a spiritual being. Like I do feel like a spiritual sense in me. Like
Mm.
I'm not like, I tried to be like I tried to be an atheist. I tried to like I did. And I was just like, man, I'm really not an atheist. Like, I love my friends that are. Like I think it's badass. I'm like, hell yeah, like so like meta, like be an atheist.
Yeah.
But I can't be, and it's funny because like a lot of people I work with are, and I think they're a little bit like, oh, that's nice, Becca, like that you are like still like a spiritual person, but yeah, like I just feel like my partner also was raised Catholic and like is like
Mm.
Mexican Catholic, which is like different than like
Mm.
she always says that she's like being Catholic for a Mexican is very different than
It's
being
very
like a Roman Catholic, you know?
yeah, yeah,
Like I'm wearing the Virgin right now, like that's like a
yeah.
part of like, our ethos or whatever. Or it's just part of like a tradition. It's like it's culture. Um, so yeah, that's something that like it speaks to me in a way that makes me feel connected to love and like makes me feel connected to a greater higher being. Like I do think like
Mm.
in like, AA, like I understand like my friends that participate in like the belief in a higher than self.
Mm.
And I like that. Like I feel like that to me keeps this not gross even. Like being a musician can be gross at a certain point where
Yeah,
you're just like, me, like love me, like see me, need me, you
yeah,
know. Yeah, but like also I need something other than me. Like I want something other than me. So yeah, it's definitely part of me. It's just not like it's not religious and it's definitely not like prescribed to anybody else. Like I'm not
yeah,
like peddling it. Like I'm not like
yeah.
you should believe
No,
what I believe. Not at all. You should
absolutely
believe what
not.
you
No,
believe.
absolutely right. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. What about in 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 again in any sort of part of your life, something like uncertainty. How do you handle uncertainty? Are you comfortable with uncertainty in your life?
Well, it's such a funny question because as we're like nearing the end, I haven't really talked about this very much. I've just been saying this because I just actually was diagnosed with OCD earlier this year.
Mm.
And I had been going to like talk therapy, for the last couple of years. And
Yeah.
my therapist was like, hey, like, I think I'm seeing signs of this. And, I really would like you to try and like go to maybe see a doctor to be diagnosed. And
Mm.
I went in and I've always struggled with like the unknown, which is a
Yeah.
really big part of OCD and a really big part of sitting with it and like
Yeah.
exposure and like being like okay with like not bracing yourself for impact all the time. And I think for me, I experienced my life kind of like I can trace it back again to when I came out I knew that what was going to happen was going to be like incredibly hard. And I
Yeah.
think from that, I just like experienced that through life in general. Like, you asked me at the very beginning of this conversation, how are you feeling this week? And I would say that because of my life, usually I'd be like, prepare yourself, Becca, like, prepare for the worst, like prepare for the worst. And now, like with this like knowledge of why my brain was doing that, I can say like my practice is to literally sit in the unknown.
Yeah.
My like meditation, my job is to embrace the unknown. And like that is so beautiful. And also like to be a musician is to literally walk into the unknown.
Yeah.
At all times. You make something that you love so much. Like I love this record like in a way that I've never loved anything. Like it just
Yeah.
feels like so scary. Like it just feels like, because I am just like here's my heart, like and yet like the work I'm doing is like, it's okay if people don't love it. It's okay if people love it. It's okay if they do love it. Like you're okay.
Yeah.
Because that is the space that you allow yourself. So
Well, people should love it, and I'm sure that that word "should" again. I must stop using the word "should." I'm sure people will love it. It's a phenomenal piece of work. So, Becca, thanks very much. Thanks very much for taking the time and talking so openly. It's been fantastic.
Thank you so much. It's been such a wonderful interview.
Thanks for listening to the show, and I really hope that you enjoyed it and that you'll tune in for the next episode. In the meantime, it would be really awesome if you could rate and review the show and also share it with any friends who you think might enjoy it.